The glass of water flew through the air in what felt like slow motion, heading directly toward Judge Judy Shineland's face, and in that split second, everyone in the courtroom knew they were witnessing a career-ending decision that would land someone in jail within 30 seconds. The sound of liquid splashing across the judge's bench echoed through the stunned silence like a gunshot, and what happened in those next 30 seconds would become the most replayed moment in courtroom television history, shared over 94 million times across every social media platform imaginable. This wasn't just contempt of court. This was assault on a sitting judge caught on camera, and Judge Judy's response would be so swift, so devastating, that bailiffs in courtrooms across the country now use this footage in training videos about how to handle violent outbursts in the courtroom. When Amanda Peterson, a 38-year-old self-proclaimed wellness influencer from Beverly Hills, picked up that bottle of Evian water and made the decision to throw it, she triggered a legal response so immediate and so severe that she would go from standing in a courtroom to sitting in a jail cell wearing handcuffs before most people could finish processing what they had just witnessed. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Amanda didn't just lose her case. She didn't just get embarrassed on national television. What Judge Judy did in those 30 seconds, what the bailiff did, what the entire justice system did in response to this act of violence was so perfectly executed, so professionally devastating, that it became a masterclass in why you never, ever put your hands on a judge or throw anything at a judge, no matter how angry you are or how entitled you think you are or how many Instagram followers you believe make you special. If you're ready to see the most insane courtroom assault ever caught on camera and watch Judge Judy deliver instant justice that will restore your faith that actions have real consequences, smash that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens to this entitled influencer in those 30 seconds will prove that no amount of social media followers can save you from accountability when you choose violence over self-control. Trust me, every second of this destruction is caught on camera, and you won't believe how fast karma can work when you assault America's toughest judge. Amanda Peterson was everything wrong with influencer culture wrapped up in designer athleisure wear and fake spirituality. At 38 years old, she had built an Instagram following of 850,000 people by posting perfectly filtered photos of herself doing yoga poses on beaches, drinking green smoothies in her supposedly owned Beverly Hills home, and selling weekend wellness retreats that cost $5,000 per person. Her social media was a carefully curated fantasy of meditation, manifestation, and what she called higher consciousness, with captions about positive energy and living in alignment and gratitude changing everything. But the reality behind the Instagram filter was far darker and far more desperate than her followers could have imagined. Amanda lived in a $2.8 million Beverly Hills home that she rented but claimed to own, driving a leased white Range Rover with a custom license plate that read Namaste, and wearing nothing but expensive Lululemon outfits accessorized with crystal jewelry that she claimed had healing properties. She ran something called Namaste Wellness Retreats, where she charged wealthy women $5,000 for a weekend of yoga, meditation, and what she described as transformative healing, but what former attendees described as overpriced camping with a narcissist who spent most of the time talking about herself and taking photos for Instagram. She had 850,000 followers who hung on her every post, believing they were watching someone who had achieved enlightenment and financial freedom through positive thinking and manifestation. The truth was that Amanda Peterson was drowning in debt, barely keeping up appearances, and growing increasingly desperate as her house of cards began to collapse around her. She owed $127,000 across multiple credit cards, was 4 months behind on her rent to the tune of $18,000, and the IRS had filed a lien against her business for $43,000 in unpaid taxes. Her wellness retreats were failing because word was spreading about her toxic behavior and lack of actual credentials, and she was running out of ways to maintain the lifestyle she had been faking for her followers. But Amanda had developed a strategy for getting money when she needed it, a pattern of behavior that had worked for her multiple times before, and she was about to try it one more time on the wrong person. Amanda's method was simple and effective. She would hire a small business owner for a service, use that service for her business, then weeks later claim the work was defective and demand not just a refund but additional money for damage to her reputation and business. She would threaten to sick her hundreds of thousands of followers on the small business through negative reviews and social media attacks. And most business owners, unable to afford a prolonged legal battle and terrified of the social media mob, would simply pay her to go away. She had done this to a graphic designer who paid her $1,800, a caterer who settled for $2,200, a photographer who gave her $1,500, and several others. It was extortion dressed up as customer complaints, and Amanda had convinced herself that she was simply a savvy businesswoman who knew how to leverage her platform. She had no idea that her latest target would refuse to be bullied, would take her to court, and would end up sitting across from her in Judge Judy's courtroom on the day Amanda's entire world would explode in the most spectacular and violent way possible. Marcus Chen was 55 years old and represented everything that Amanda Peterson secretly resented about people who had actually earned their success through decades of hard work rather than Instagram filters and manufactured spirituality. He was a Taiwanese immigrant who had come to America at age 25 with $800 in his pocket, a dream of building something meaningful, and a deep respect for meditation and Eastern philosophy that Amanda only pretended to understand for social media content. Marcus had worked 3 jobs simultaneously for 15 years, sleeping 4 hours a night, sending money back to his family while saving every possible penny, learning English at night school, and slowly building the expertise and capital necessary to open his own meditation supply shop in a modest but respectable neighborhood where rent was affordable and the community was supportive of small businesses. His shop, called Peaceful Path Meditation Supplies, was a labor of love that reflected Marcus's genuine dedication to helping people find inner peace through quality meditation tools. He sold everything from meditation cushions and yoga mats to singing bowls and incense, but his specialty was custom meditation cushions that he handcrafted himself using techniques he had learned from master craftsmen in Taiwan and refined over 20 years of practice. Each cushion was made with meticulous attention to detail, using high-quality fabrics and filling materials, with stitching so precise and durable that customers would often return years later to tell him their cushions were still in perfect condition. Marcus had built his reputation on integrity, quality, and treating every customer with respect and patience, even the difficult ones who demanded discounts or complained about prices or asked him to rush orders that required careful craftsmanship. When Amanda Peterson walked into his shop 6 months before the courtroom confrontation, Marcus had no idea he was about to meet someone who would nearly destroy everything he had built. Amanda entered his modest store like she was inspecting a disaster zone, her eyes scanning the simple but clean space with barely concealed disdain, immediately commenting that it wasn't as upscale as the boutiques she usually frequented in Beverly Hills, as if his Brooklyn location was evidence of inferior skill rather than simply a different economic reality. She explained that she needed custom meditation cushions for her upcoming wellness retreat, something special that would impress her high-end clients and look good in the photos she would post on Instagram. Marcus showed her his portfolio of previous work, explained his process, discussed fabric options and sizes and colors, and quoted her a fair price of $3,200 for 20 custom cushions that would be handcrafted to her exact specifications. Amanda immediately demanded a discount, claiming that the exposure she would give him on her Instagram account was worth thousands of dollars in free advertising, a claim that made Marcus uncomfortable because he had learned long ago that people who promise exposure instead of payment are usually trying to avoid paying fair prices. But Amanda was persistent and increasingly aggressive in her negotiating tactics, hinting that she could just as easily find another craftsman who would appreciate the opportunity to work with an influencer of her status, and eventually Marcus agreed to a 15% discount just to make her happy and move forward with the project. He spent the next 3 weeks working on her cushions, documenting every step of the process with photographs, sending her progress updates, asking for her approval on fabric choices and stitching patterns, making sure that every single detail met her specifications exactly. Amanda approved everything, signed off on the designs, confirmed the measurements, and seemed satisfied with the progress. When Marcus delivered the completed cushions to Amanda's rental home in Beverly Hills, he carried each one inside personally, laying them out for her inspection, explaining the craftsmanship that had gone into each piece. Amanda walked around them slowly, picking them up one by one, examining the stitching, testing the firmness, checking the colors against her aesthetic preferences. After nearly 30 minutes of inspection, she finally said, "These will work," in a tone that suggested she was being generous rather than acknowledging the exceptional quality of the work Marcus had delivered. She signed the delivery confirmation that stated she had received the cushions in good condition, paid the remaining balance with her credit card, and Marcus left feeling relieved that the difficult client was finally satisfied and the project was complete. 3 days later, Amanda even sent him a text message that read, "The cushions look great, thanks," which Marcus saved because he had learned to document everything when dealing with demanding customers. 2 weeks after that text message, Amanda used the cushions at her $5,000 per person wellness retreat, a weekend event at a rented estate in Malibu where wealthy women paid ridiculous amounts of money to do yoga, eat vegan food, and listen to Amanda talk about manifestation and higher consciousness. The cushions were prominently featured in every activity, and Amanda made sure to photograph them extensively, posting multiple images and videos to her Instagram account showing her retreat attendees sitting on the beautiful custom cushions, meditating in scenic outdoor locations, participating in group sessions where the cushions created a perfect aesthetic circle. In one post, Amanda's caption read, "Obsessed with these custom meditation cushions. Exactly what I envisioned. Quality matters when you're creating transformative experiences." Sparkles folded hands. The post received thousands of likes and hundreds of comments from followers praising her taste and asking where they could buy similar cushions. But 3 weeks after her successful retreat, 3 weeks after posting photos praising the cushions, 3 weeks after her clients had used them without a single complaint, Amanda sent Marcus a text message that made his blood run cold. "The cushions are defective. The stitching is coming apart and the fabric is cheap. I need a full refund of $3,200 plus $10,000 for damage to my business reputation. My lawyer will contact you." Marcus read the message 3 times, unable to comprehend how cushions that had been perfect enough to feature in her Instagram posts and use at a premium retreat could suddenly be defective. He responded asking for photos of the alleged defects, asking which specific cushions had problems, offering to repair or replace anything that was genuinely damaged. Amanda's response was immediate and threatening. "I don't have time for this. Full refund plus damages or my 850,000 followers will hear about how you scammed me. Your choice." Marcus Chin knew he was being extorted, but he also knew he was facing someone with resources and a social media platform that could destroy his small business overnight through coordinated attacks and fake reviews. He consulted with a lawyer who told him the truth he didn't want to hear. Fighting this would cost thousands of dollars in legal fees. Amanda could weaponize her followers against his business regardless of the truth, and many small business owners in his situation simply paid the settlement to make the problem disappear. But Marcus had spent 20 years building his reputation on integrity and quality work, and everything inside him rebelled against the idea of paying someone who was clearly lying and manipulating the situation for financial gain. He had documentation proving the cushions were perfect. He had her text messages praising them. He had her Instagram posts featuring them prominently. He had signed delivery confirmations. He decided to fight, even though it would cost him money he couldn't easily afford and stress that kept him awake at night wondering if he had made the right decision. Amanda's lawyer sent threatening letters filled with legal language designed to intimidate someone who didn't understand the American legal system, claiming breach of contract, fraud, negligent business practices, and damage to Amanda's professional reputation. The demands escalated to $13,200, and when Marcus refused to pay, Amanda made good on her threat by posting on Instagram about how a meditation supply shop had scammed her with defective products and refused to make it right. Her followers immediately began attacking Marcus's business, flooding his social media pages with 1-star reviews, calling his shop to harass him, posting negative comments anywhere his business was mentioned online. Marcus watched helplessly as his carefully built reputation was torn apart by people who had never met him, never seen his work, and were simply following their influencers' instructions to destroy a small business owner who had dared to stand up to her. The case eventually made its way to Judge Judy's courtroom, and both Marcus and Amanda prepared for what they believed would be a straightforward small claims dispute. Marcus gathered all his documentation, every photo, every text message, every signed approval form, every piece of evidence that proved he had delivered exactly what Amanda ordered and that she had been completely satisfied until she decided she needed money and saw an opportunity to extort it from someone she viewed as an easy target. Amanda prepared very differently. She spent 3 weeks printing legal articles from random websites, practicing her victim narrative in front of her bathroom mirror, selecting the perfect outfit that would project success and spiritual enlightenment, and convincing herself that her 850,000 Instagram followers gave her a kind of authority that would intimidate even a television judge. Her lawyer warned her repeatedly to be respectful, to control her temper, to follow courtroom protocol, but Amanda dismissed these warnings with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for her behavior and genuinely believed that her social media presence made her special. The morning of the taping, Amanda arrived at the courthouse with her phone in one hand, filming everything for her Instagram stories, and her emotional support Pomeranian tucked under her other arm. She had purchased fake emotional support animal papers online for $49 and genuinely believed this entitled her to bring her pet anywhere she wanted, despite having no actual mental health condition that required the animal's presence. She posted on Instagram before entering the building, "About to educate this TV judge about business law and protecting your brand. When you have 850,000 people behind you, nobody can stop you. Justice is coming." Sparkles folded hands #girlboss #wellnesswarrior #don't mess with me. Her followers flooded the comments with supportive messages telling her to destroy Marcus, to make him pay, to show him who he was dealing with, completely unaware that they were encouraging someone to commit what would soon become assault on a judge. Judge Judy had reviewed the case file the night before, and her experienced eye had immediately spotted the pattern. She had seen Amanda's type 1,000 times. Entitled, manipulative, using social media as a weapon, targeting vulnerable people who couldn't afford to fight back. But what made this case different was the thoroughness of Marcus's documentation and the sloppiness of Amanda's lies. Judge Judy had obtained Amanda's own social media posts through her research team, posts where Amanda had publicly praised the very cushions she now claimed were defective. She had the timeline of events showing Amanda had used the cushions successfully at her retreat before suddenly claiming they were damaged. She had the text messages and emails showing Amanda's approval at every stage of the process. Judge Judy knew exactly what kind of person was about to walk into her courtroom, and she was prepared to expose this fraud in a way that would leave no doubt about who was telling the truth. When Amanda strutted into the courtroom holding her dog and carrying her leather portfolio stuffed with printed internet articles, Judge Judy's eyes tracked her every movement with the focused intensity of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. Amanda shot confident glances at the cameras, already imagining herself going viral for all the right reasons, picturing her followers sharing clips of her standing up to a judge and winning. She had no idea that within minutes she would indeed go viral, but as the most hated woman on the internet rather than the girl boss hero she imagined herself to be. Marcus entered quietly behind her, his modest appearance and nervous demeanor making him look exactly like what he was. A hard-working small business owner who just wanted justice and the chance to clear his name from the lies that had been destroying his reputation for months. Judge Judy opened the proceedings with her signature no-nonsense approach, but before she could even begin reviewing the case, she noticed the Pomeranian in Amanda's lap. "Miss Peterson, you've brought a dog into my courtroom. This is not allowed. Bailiff, remove the animal." Amanda's response was immediate and indignant, her voice rising with entitled outrage as she declared that he was her emotional support animal and she had rights and this was discrimination. Judge Judy asked for her paperwork from a licensed mental health professional, and Amanda fumbled through her bag to produce the fake certificate she had purchased online. Judge Judy examined it for exactly 3 seconds before handing it back with barely concealed contempt. "This is a $49 certificate from a website. This is not a legitimate emotional support animal. Bailiff, take the dog." Amanda's face flushed red as someone from the gallery had to come forward to take her Pomeranian, and she muttered loud enough for the microphones to catch, "This is ridiculous," while Judge Judy simply stared at her with the expression that regular viewers knew meant someone was already in serious trouble. Judge Judy allowed the proceedings to continue despite Amanda's already disrespectful attitude, asking her to explain her case against Marcus Chen and why she believed she was owed $13,200. Amanda launched into a prepared monologue that she had clearly rehearsed dozens of times, speaking in the kind of business jargon and spiritual language that made her sound like a parody of every entitled wellness influencer who had ever existed. She talked about her brand, her platform, her community of 850,000 followers, her reputation as a wellness entrepreneur, and how Marcus had damaged all of that by delivering defective products that fell apart immediately and made her look unprofessional in front of her high-paying clients. She spoke for nearly 3 minutes without actually providing any specific details about what was wrong with the cushions, just vague claims about poor stitching and cheap materials and things falling apart, waving her hands dramatically as if her confidence and volume could substitute for actual evidence. Judge Judy interrupted her with surgical precision. "Miss Peterson, I didn't ask about your Instagram followers. I asked what was wrong with the cushions. Specifically." Amanda's face showed annoyance at being interrupted, and she let out an exaggerated sigh that the microphones picked up clearly, the kind of sigh reserved for dealing with people she considered beneath her intelligence. "Well, if you'd let me finish explaining the context, Your Honor, I was trying to tell you that the stitching came apart and the fabric was cheap and they basically fell apart the first time we used them." Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "The first time? So they fell apart immediately?" Amanda realized her mistake and tried to backtrack. "Well, within the first few uses. Maybe several uses. I don't know exactly, but they definitely didn't last." Judge Judy's expression showed she had caught the lie, and she made a note on her papers before turning to Marcus. Marcus presented his evidence quietly and methodically, his hands shaking slightly from nerves but his documentation speaking for itself. He showed the order forms with Amanda's signature approving every detail. He showed progress photographs that Amanda had approved at multiple stages of production. He showed the delivery confirmation that Amanda signed stating she received the cushions in good condition. Most devastatingly, he showed text messages from Amanda 3 days after delivery saying, "The cushions look great, thanks. The courtroom could feel the energy shifting as the evidence mounted against Amanda's claims, and Judge Judy's questions became increasingly pointed, asking Amanda to explain how cushions that looked great 3 days after delivery suddenly became defective weeks later. Amanda's answers grew more defensive and less coherent, her voice rising in pitch as she realized her lies were being exposed in front of millions of viewers. Then Judge Judy pulled out the printed Instagram posts, and Amanda's face went pale. Judge Judy held up photo after photo of Amanda's retreat, showing the cushions prominently featured, looking perfect in every image. She read Amanda's own caption aloud with heavy sarcasm dripping from every word. "Obsessed with these custom meditation cushions. Exactly what I envisioned. Quality matters when you're creating transformative experiences." The courtroom was completely silent except for Judge Judy's voice. "Miss Peterson, you posted this 2 weeks after receiving the cushions. You were obsessed with them. The quality mattered. They were exactly what you envisioned. So when did they become defective?" Amanda stammered that she was just being polite, that she didn't want to embarrass herself in front of her clients, that the photos didn't show the real problems. Judge Judy cut through every excuse like a knife through butter, asking why Amanda would lie to her followers if she was really dissatisfied, asking why not a single client complained about the cushions if they were truly defective. Judge Judy then revealed what her research had uncovered about Amanda's pattern of similar lawsuits against small business owners, reading through a list of previous cases where Amanda had used services, claimed defects, and forced settlements through threats and intimidation. "You're not a dissatisfied customer, Miss Peterson. You're a con artist who targets people who can't afford to fight back. You use your social media following as a weapon to extort money from hardworking business owners." Amanda's hands began shaking on the table, her carefully constructed image crumbling in real time as Judge Judy exposed not just her lies but her entire pattern of predatory behavior. Judge Judy then revealed Amanda's financial situation, the $127,000 in credit card debt, the $18,000 in back rent, the IRS lien, painting a picture of someone desperate for money and willing to lie and cheat to get it. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair with finality. "Miss Peterson, I've seen enough. Your case is dismissed. You get nothing. Not one penny. Furthermore, Mr. Chin is awarded $4,500 for the legal fees he incurred defending himself against your fraudulent lawsuit." Amanda shot up from her chair like she had been electrocuted, her face cycling through shock, anger, and indignation in rapid succession. "What? No. You can't do that. This is bullshit. You didn't even listen to my side." Judge Judy's voice became ice cold. "Sit down, Miss Peterson, and control yourself." But Amanda was beyond control now, beyond reason, her entitled rage taking over every ounce of judgment she might have possessed. "I will not sit down. This is completely unfair. You're clearly biased. You don't understand business law. I have 850,000 followers and they're going to hear about this." Judge Judy stood up, something she rarely did, and her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Miss Peterson, sit down right now or you will be removed from my courtroom for contempt." Amanda's eyes were wild, her breathing rapid, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She looked around the courtroom as if searching for someone to validate her outrage, but every face showed shock at her behavior. The bailiff took a step closer, sensing the situation was escalating beyond normal courtroom drama. Amanda's gaze fell on the bottle of Evian water sitting on her table, the expensive imported water she had brought because regular water wasn't good enough for her. In that moment, watching her on the footage later, you could see the exact instant when rage overwhelmed every survival instinct she possessed. Her hand moved toward the bottle and Judge Judy saw it happening. "Miss Peterson, don't you dare." But Amanda was too far gone to hear warnings or think about consequences. She grabbed the bottle, unscrewed the cap with shaking hands, and Judge Judy's voice cut through the tension one final time. "Put that down right now." Amanda's response was to scream, "You want to disrespect me?" and throw the entire contents of the bottle directly at Judge Judy's face. The water arced through the air, and time seemed to slow down as everyone in the courtroom processed what was happening. The water hit Judge Judy's bench and splashed across her robe, some of it reaching her face and papers. The sound of the impact echoed through the absolute silence that followed, a silence so complete that the humming of the cameras seemed deafening in comparison. Judge Judy sat perfectly still, water dripping from her desk, her face a mask of controlled fury that was somehow more terrifying than if she had been screaming. The 30 seconds that followed the water hitting Judge Judy's bench would be replayed millions of times, analyzed frame by frame, and used as the definitive example of how quickly consequences can arrive when you assault a judge. Judge Judy remained absolutely motionless for what felt like an eternity but was actually only 3 seconds, water still dripping from her desk onto her robe, her eyes locked on Amanda with an intensity that made everyone in the courtroom hold their breath. When she finally spoke, her voice was so cold and controlled that it was more frightening than any amount of yelling could have been. "Bailiff, place Miss Peterson under arrest immediately for assault on a judicial officer." The bailiff, who had already been moving toward Amanda the moment she grabbed the bottle, was on her in seconds, joined by the court security officer who had materialized from his position near the door. Amanda's face showed absolute shock as the reality of what she had just done began penetrating her rage-fueled mind. "Wait, no, I didn't mean to, she made me do it, this isn't fair." Her voice was rising to a shriek as the bailiff grabbed her arm and spun her around, pulling her hands behind her back with practiced efficiency. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back, Miss Peterson. You're under arrest." The metallic click of handcuffs closing around Amanda's wrists echoed through the silent courtroom like a judge's gavel delivering a final verdict. Amanda began crying immediately, her carefully applied makeup already running down her face in dark streaks, her spiritual wellness guru aesthetic completely destroyed. "Please? I'm sorry. It was just water. She provoked me. I have a business. This will ruin me." The bailiff ignored her protests, reading her Miranda rights in a steady voice while Amanda sobbed and begged and tried to explain that this was all a misunderstanding. Judge Judy stood up fully now, water still visible on her robe, her posture radiating the kind of authority that comes from decades of dealing with every type of criminal and manipulator imaginable. "Miss Peterson, in 35 years on the bench, I have been insulted, cursed at, and disrespected in every way you can imagine. Never, not once, has anyone been stupid enough to assault me in my courtroom. You are charged with criminal contempt of court, assault on a judicial officer, and battery. You will be held without bail until your arraignment, and this footage will be provided to the district attorney for prosecution. Bailiff, remove her from my courtroom." Amanda tried to turn back toward Judge Judy, still sobbing, still trying to apologize or explain or somehow undo what she had just done. "Your Honor, please, I didn't mean it, I was just angry, please don't do this." Judge Judy's response was final. "You assaulted a sitting judge on camera. There is no explanation that excuses that. There is no apology that erases that. You made a choice and now you face the consequences of that choice. Get her out of my sight." The bailiff and security officer escorted Amanda toward the courtroom exit, her legs barely supporting her weight as the full horror of her situation crashed down on her consciousness. She was still crying, still trying to talk, still unable to accept that her entire life had just imploded in 30 seconds because she couldn't control her temper. As they reached the door, Judge Judy delivered one final statement that would be quoted in news articles and legal discussions for years to come. "Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks their social media following makes them special, who thinks their anger justifies violence, who thinks there are no real consequences for their actions. In my courtroom and in life, you touch a judge, you go to jail. Period. End of story." The door closed behind Amanda with a finality that seemed to punctuate Judge Judy's words, and the courtroom remained in stunned silence for several seconds before erupting in a chaos of whispers and shocked reactions. Judge Judy turned to Marcus Chin, who sat at the plaintiff's table looking shell-shocked by what he had just witnessed. "Mr. Chin, I apologize that you had to see that disgraceful display. Not only is Miss Peterson's case dismissed with prejudice, meaning she can never sue you again for this matter, but I'm awarding you an additional $5,000 for the emotional distress and business damage she has caused you. Furthermore, I'm referring this entire case to the district attorney for investigation of possible fraud and extortion charges based on her pattern of targeting small business owners. You did nothing wrong. Your work is excellent. Your integrity is unquestionable. And I hope this ordeal hasn't discouraged you from continuing to serve your community with the same dedication and quality you've shown." Marcus, tears forming in his eyes, could barely whisper his response. "Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for seeing the truth." Within 2 hours of the episode airing, the footage of Amanda throwing water at Judge Judy had exploded across every social media platform in existence. The hashtags Judge Judy assault, Karen goes to jail, and instant karma were trending worldwide. The clip hit 10 million views within the first hour, 20 million by hour 2, and would eventually reach 94 million views in just 72 hours, making it the most viral courtroom moment in internet history. Amanda's Instagram account was flooded with hundreds of thousands of comments before her social media team could disable commenting. People were sharing the clip with captions like, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes," and "Finally a Karen faces real consequences," and this is the most satisfying 30 seconds of video ever recorded. News outlets picked up the story immediately, with legal experts appearing on CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC to discuss the case and unanimous praise Judge Judy's handling of the situation. Meanwhile, Amanda Peterson was experiencing the booking process at the local police station, still in handcuffs, still crying, still unable to fully process how her life had gone from Instagram influencer to criminal defendant in less than an hour. Her fingerprints were taken, her mugshot was photographed with her makeup-streaked face and disheveled hair, creating an image that would haunt her for years, and she was placed in a holding cell to await her bail hearing. The charges filed against her were serious: criminal contempt of court carrying up to 6 months in jail, assault on a judicial officer carrying up to 1 year, and battery carrying up to 6 months, with a total potential sentence of over 2 years in prison. At her bail hearing the next day, the prosecutor argued she was a flight risk and had shown violent tendencies, while her overworked public defender tried to argue this was a first offense and she showed remorse. The judge watched the footage of the assault, listened to both arguments, and set bail at $50,000. Amanda, who was $127,000 in debt and couldn't even pay her rent, had no way to post bail. She would spend the next 8 days in jail before a friend finally managed to scrape together the bail money. The aftermath for Amanda was total and complete destruction. Her Instagram followers dropped from 850,000 to 340,000 within 48 hours, with the remaining followers mostly hate watchers waiting to see what happened next. Her Namaste Wellness Retreats business collapsed entirely, with all future events cancelled and former clients demanding refunds. Business partners and sponsors severed all ties, issuing public statements distancing themselves from her. Her landlord began eviction proceedings. Her car was repossessed. News crews camped outside every location associated with her, making it impossible for her to go anywhere without being recognized and confronted. Meanwhile, Marcus Chen's meditation supply shop was overwhelmed with orders from people across the country who wanted to support him. His story was featured in national news as an example of a small business owner standing up to an influencer bully, and a GoFundMe campaign started by sympathetic viewers raised over $184,000 to help him expand his business and recover from the ordeal. The contrast between Amanda's destruction and Marcus's vindication became the ultimate example of how justice, when properly delivered, can restore balance to situations where bullies had previously operated with impunity. Amanda Peterson eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges and served 90 days in jail, performed 200 hours of community service, paid a $10,000 fine, and received a permanent criminal record that would follow her for the rest of her life. She lost everything: her home, her business, her reputation, her followers, and her freedom. She moved back to Ohio to live with her parents, working minimum wage jobs and trying to rebuild a life from the ashes of her own choices. Judge Judy's handling of the assault became legendary in legal circles and popular culture, a perfect example of swift justice delivered with absolute authority. And Marcus Chen continued making his meditation cushions with the same integrity and quality that had defined his work from the beginning, now with a waiting list of customers who wanted to support a man who had stood up to a bully and won. The lesson was clear and unmistakable. In Judge Judy's courtroom and in life, 30 seconds is all it takes for consequences to arrive when you choose violence over accountability, and no amount of Instagram followers can save you from the reality that actions always have consequences.